Hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi. Thanks, Rick. So as Grant mentioned earlier, we've only got 30 minutes. So if you have any questions, if you can submit them in the chat with with your contact information, and then we'll reach out directly to you if we don't have time to. My name is Mark Beech. I've been working in IT infrastructure for over 20 years. I've worked in all kinds of organizations of different industries and sizes, from 60,000 users down to a few hundred. My initial experience was back with NT4, migrating to Active Directory. So I've worked with Active Directory kind of from the start. Also to Citrix and VMware along the way, and then more recently ADFS and Azure technology, obviously. Today we're going to be talking about just kind of an overview of the Windows Virtual Desktop. This has been generally available worldwide since September 2019, and it's the only platform that delivers the multi-session Windows 10 instance. It gives you a desktop that's always up to date and secure. It's optimized for Office Pro Plus, and you can just deploy it and scale it in minutes. You can deliver desktops and applications. So a remote application and desktop scenario have particular compliance requirements, whether that's healthcare, financial services, or government. It's easy to set these up to comply to those. It's a good use case. If you have temporary solutions where you have contractors or short-term staff, or you're going through mergers and acquisitions and you want to have people on your desktop, and great scenario there. And then also if you have specific user types like call center workers, where you've got a lot of people changing like different shifts, and you don't want to have you want to minimize your sort of hardware investment, or bring your own device users is also particularly with the current climate of what's going on, is a great use case as well. Also specialized workloads, when you've got if you've got a group of users that need sort of high horsepower machines, and you don't want to make the investment in the hardware and replacing that, that's a great scenario for support for legacy apps and OS, which we'll touch on a bit later. Also great for obviously for development and testing needs. So the benefits of Windows Virtual Desktop: it's the best user experience, gives you a full Windows experience from any device, and it's optimized for Office 365. On Azure, so your data is obviously retained within your cloud environment. It's not leaving that. It's very simple to manage, and it's cost effective. With the multi-session Windows 10 license, you license per Windows instance, not per user, which helps you keep the costs down. Microsoft's also very invested in their partner ecosystem, so you can leverage technology that you've already invested in to have hybrid environments and manage your scenarios. So what do we mean by best virtualized end user experience? It's a desktop, obviously, that you can access from any platforms. You can access it from phones, from Macs, from Windows clients. Back in the day, when I first got into sort of virtual desktops, I convinced my managers to allow me to switch all the help desk computers for thin clients running Citrix, and it made me very unpopular. The experience wasn't very. They were slow. They had poor image quality, just generally a bad experience. This isn't like that at all. This is, it looks and feels like a locally installed instance of Windows. I have a laptop here with a 30-inch ultra-wide monitor. As soon as I fire up my Windows Virtual Desktop, it expands across the two displays. It's absolutely seamless. Looks exactly like a local. It also gives you very fast logon times. I'll touch on a bit more in the next slide, but they use containerized user profiles, which dramatically increases logon time. The profiles dynamically attached to the Windows Virtual Desktop at login, and gives you a consistent feel on no matter which onto. And Office 365 is obviously very fast because everything that you do is happening in real time across the Microsoft network. So Microsoft made the acquisition of FS Logix Technologies, and that they've used that technology in three ways here with Windows Virtual Desktop. The containerized profiles replaces user profiles, and it increases the efficiency of the logon time, as I said. So that's a great add. They've also used the app masking process, which means that you can have one gold image. You don't have to maintain multiple images, and on there, and you're able to filter per user which ones they have access to effectively. There's also Java redirection. This allows you to have multiple instances of Java, but filter certain versions to only be accessible by certain applications. So that reduces our vulnerabilities. This ties into the Azure MFA conditional access, all those kind of configurations that you already are probably utilizing with Office 365. So it makes it far easier to configure these requirements than an on-prem solution, and it's also cheaper than the equivalent on-prem. And the Windows Virtual instances, reducing the attack surface. There's no inbound ports. I just saw bad network quality. Can you guys hear me okay?
You're cutting in and out a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure what I can do about that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Soldier on. Soldier on.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, so reduced attack surface, the using reverse connect technology, there's no inbound ports open on the VMs. So obviously that's an advantage. And the role-based access for administration is very granular, as with all of Azure. So administration, you can give just the access that you need to the right people. And user sessions are isolated, which obviously increases security, and that includes with multi-session Windows instances. So efficient and simplified management. Management is much simplified than the alternatives. There's one. So it's Azure based, so I think most infrastructure administrators are familiar with the workflow and the tools and the layout of Azure by now. And the tools, Microsoft has its own tools, but they're also invested in their partner ecosystem. And so you can leverage your current investment with VMware or Citrix. There's environments and tools. And Microsoft's just very heavily invested in this at the moment. So they made a statement that they're aiming to have the best and most comprehensive tool set out there for virtual desktop technology. You can also, there's tools available to migrate your existing Windows Remote Desktop and app environment. And in doing so, it drastically reduces your management overhead and saves you money on hardware and licensing moving to this model. The support for Windows Server 2012 and RDS 2012 R2. And there's app compatibility for existing Windows Servers images currently in use on-prem. So a little more on the multi-session Windows 10 experience. This is the only platform that this is available. Obviously, previously to have a multi-session OS with Windows, it had to be a server OS. You can't install this on-prem in any way in RDS or anything like that. It has to be with the Azure Windows Virtual Desktop. Sorry. So it's that's obviously a benefit from a licensing point of view. As I said before, you're licensing for the OS, not per user, so it's going to drastically cut your costs there. So this slides, these numbers are based on a Microsoft study scenario. I believe it was based on 1,000 users. And based on on-prem infrastructure and licensing and management, the infrastructure savings are around 70%, based on the cloud resources being cheaper and the value of the compute rate. The licensing savings around 60%, largely because of the multi-session Windows environment. And labor savings were about 60%. The storage management in the cloud is obviously a lot easier, and platform as a service in general is lower labor costs. The Azure pricing calculator has now been expanded and includes this. It'll give you kind of a ballpark figure. We have access to third-party tools that can give you more accurate sort of estimations based on more scenario-based simulations type thing. So feel free to reach out if we can help you there. So the partner ecosystem, as I mentioned before, Citrix and VMware, there's hybrid environments available. So you can manage Windows virtual desktops with your current tool sets and in a hybrid environment. So between your on-prem and online, there's a lot of integration. There's also the value-added partners, the ones listed here. There's others as well: CloudJumper, Lakeside, BibleTech, Liquidware, ThinPrint, and Nerdio. CloudJumper, we've worked with a little bit recently. Windows Virtual Desktops is a great scenario to start with, great offering to start with. CloudJumper just kind of like takes it to the next level. There's a lot of extra features there to improve and enhance everything that's going on and make it more cost effective too. Obviously, this is all built on Azure, which, as we all know, is global, it's secure, it's scalable, it's standardized. Azure has the largest geographic footprint of any cloud provider, and they're also carbon neutral. If that's something that you're interested in, Microsoft said by 2030 that they'll be carbon negative, which is kind of cool. So Windows 7 support. You can provision Windows 7 machines as Windows Virtual Desktops. Windows 7 reached end of life 2020 in January, but it still represents about 30% of the desktop market share currently. There's a lot of people still have Windows 7 out there for various reasons, for old applications or whatever the need may be. If you convert those machines to Windows Virtual Desktops, it includes free extended security updates until January 2023. So based on how long you keep them around for and what level of OS you have, that represents a $25 to $200 savings per year per device, which is obviously significant. Windows Virtual Desktop requirements. So obviously you're going to need an Azure Active Directory. It is fully reliant on a traditional Active Directory as well. you can use the Azure AD domain services if you're a cloud-only environment, but you can't provision the desktops. There's no way to provision them or log on without the Active Directory. You also need a subscription that has a virtual network that has access to that Active Directory. So in most scenarios, my recommendation would be to provision a domain controller in your tenant that's on the same virtual network that you're running your Windows virtual desktops from. That's everything on that one. So supported operating systems, as I mentioned, Windows 10, the multi-session is the only place that you're going to be able to get that OS. We also support Windows 7, and then the server operating systems 2012 R2, 2016, and 2019. And there's only support currently for 64-bit operating systems. From a configuration point of view, the instances are provisioned inside host pools. That host pool contains as many instances as you need, which will all be based on the same build. So you want to provision a host pool based on a certain sort of user persona of a user, if you like. So maybe you put all your admins or users that require lower spec machines would have a certain host pool, and then if you have developers or people that work with more intense applications that need more horsepower, they could have a different Azure virtual machine in their own host pool. There's two different kinds of host pool. There's personal and pooled. In most cases, you can use a pooled host pool. This allows leverages the Windows 10 multi-session operating system and allows users to log on to different instances as they need to. The personal pool means that it's one user per machine, obviously this is using the containerized profile, so it doesn't matter which machine, which virtual instance the user logs onto, they're going to get their personal desktop. There's two options for load balancing. By default, it's configured for breadth-based optimized load balancing, which is going to mean that this is going to guarantee the best performance for your users. So it will try to evenly distribute users across available VMs. You can also configure for depth-based. This is more for cost optimization. So this will direct users to the first VMs that are available, and then when that hits a predefined limit, it'll start to populate the sessions on the next VM. So obviously there's different scenarios there. Again, going back to my earlier example, if you've got people with less horsepower requirements with their machines, they're probably going to be fine with a depth-based model. It's going to save you money, whereas people who have a heavier load, you're probably going to want to go more breadth-based. So scaling, you can. There's a scaling tool that allows you to manage. Obviously, time's money in Azure, so you only want devices to be up when they're needed. You can configure key like peak work hours with the scaling tool, and that's going to ensure that when you hit your regular work day, there's VMs available for people to log on to. And it has kind of cold standbys, and as it starts to see the utilization of the powered up VMs start to go up, it'll start to automatically power on additional VMs in the host pool, and then equally, as you get towards the end of the workday, it's going to put some of the VMs in drain mode, where it's going to stop taking new connections on certain VMs, and as people log off, it'll start to power them down to save you money. So that's a great feature. You can also integrate the Windows Virtual Desktop with the Azure scale sets. And that's going to mean that a host pool that has, say, 10 machines in it, with a scale set, you can configure it to automatically provision additional machines as required. So how can Bennett Adelson help you with your Windows Virtual Desktop journey? We've got tools that we can, as I mentioned before, we can help you more accurately assess the costs, and we can help you plan and architect the migration. We can obviously help you carry out the migration. And we also offer a managed service for Windows Virtual Desktop environments. We've got access to third-party tools that can streamline the management. And that's everything I've got. Were there any questions?